By the afternoon of July 3, 1863, the Confederacy had already lost the war. Not on paper. Not yet. 2 more brutal years of fighting remained, but in the field outside a small Pennsylvania town, an army that had never lost a major battle in the East was about to shatter itself against an enemy line it never should have attacked. What happened at Gettysburg on that single afternoon wasn't one catastrophic decision. It was 5 compounding mistakes, each one sealing the fate of the charge before it even began. The first mistake was made the night before, in a tent full of men who knew better and said nothing loud enough. General RobertELee had watched his army fail twice already, on the first day, on the second, against a Union line dug into high ground along a ridge shaped like a fishhook. His own corps commander, James Longstreet, argued for a different plan entirely: swing around the Union flank, force the enemy to attack on ground of the Confederacy's choosing. Lee refused. He believed his men, the same men who had broken Union lines at Chancellorsville, could break this one too. Confidence built on past victories became the seed of the coming disaster. The second mistake came before a single soldier stepped into the open field. The Confederate artillery bombardment, meant to soften the Union center for the coming charge, began nearly 2 hours before the infantry moved. Gunners fired blind through drifting smoke, most rounds sailing over the Union line entirely, striking empty ground behind it. Ammunition meant to be conserved for the advance was burned away on targets that were never touched. When the guns finally fell silent, the Union artillery below the ridge was still fully intact, fully loaded, and waiting. The third mistake was the ground itself, and it was chosen anyway. Nearly 3/4 of a mile of open field separated the Confederate lines from the low stone wall where Union infantry crouched. No cover, no terrain to break the advance. Roughly 12,000 men would have to cross that distance in full view, in formation, under fire the entire way. Union cannon along the ridge had the range measured before the first Confederate soldier stepped forward. What should have been a 15-minute advance became a slow, exposed march directly into a killing field. The fourth mistake unfolded exactly as the Union gunners intended. As the Confederate lines came into range, artillery tore gaps through the advancing ranks, and still the formation pressed on, closing the distance with a discipline that would soon become its undoing. When the survivors reached the stone wall, concentrated rifle volleys from Union infantry, reinforced at the exact point of impact, cut down entire companies within minutes. A small cluster of Confederate soldiers under General Lewis Armistead broke through the wall itself, briefly seizing a Union cannon before being killed or captured almost immediately. It was the deepest the Confederacy would ever advance into Union territory during the entire war. It lasted less than 5 minutes. The fifth mistake wasn't fought on the field at all. It was the absence of what should have followed. No reserve force stood ready to exploit the breach at the wall or reinforce the survivors streaming back across the open ground. Confederate cavalry under JEB Stuart, meant to strike the Union rear in coordination with the charge, had been delayed and outmaneuvered miles away, never arriving in time to matter. The attack that was supposed to be the war-winning blow had no second wave behind it, no coordinated strike to make the sacrifice count for anything beyond the casualty list. Of the roughly 12,000 men who advanced that afternoon, more than half did not return. Entire regiments that had marched into the field simply ceased to exist as fighting units. When the survivors staggered back across the same ground they had just crossed, Lee rode out to meet them. He told the men crowding around him that the fault was his alone. It was one of the only moments in the war when a commanding general said so plainly that the disaster in front of him belonged entirely to his own decision. Gettysburg did not end the war. 2 more years of fighting lay ahead, grinding through Virginia, through the wilderness, through Petersburg, before the final surrender at Appomattox. But the Army of Northern Virginia never again mounted an offensive campaign into Union territory. It never again held the initiative it had carried into Pennsylvania. 5 mistakes, each one feeding the next. Overconfidence built on old victories, an artillery barrage that struck nothing, an open field chosen anyway, a charge sent forward without support, and a cavalry strike that never arrived. Lee's army had the courage to make the crossing. What it lacked that afternoon was a plan that gave that courage anywhere to go.